And I don't know for how long, but we're going to walk away from Jesus and his interactions with women, and we're going to talk about another social outcast tonight, and that is a Roman, a Gentile that Jesus comes into contact with, a Roman centurion. So we're in Luke chapter 7, verse 1, seeing the fact that Jesus obviously came to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, but he also came to the Gentiles. Praise God. He came to save us also. And his ministry had many Gentiles involved in it. And here's one of those stories. In Luke chapter 7, verse 1. Luke chapter 7, verse 1, it says, when he had completed, he is Jesus Christ, when he had completed all his discourse, all his teachings, in the hearing of the people, he went to Capernaum. Remember, here's a picture of Capernaum right on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, where Peter and Andrew and James and John had a fishing business with James and John's father Zebedee. This is where they were from the city of Capernaum, and this is where Jesus had made his ministry headquarters. A map, because I like to orient myself geographically. You can see Capernaum up there on the top. Well, Nazareth is there where Jesus lived as a boy. Jerusalem is down here. And here's the whole area that's called the Galilee. The Galilee. And you'll see the Sea of Galilee there, and Capernaum on the northern shores of the Sea of Galilee. So that's where we are. Many of these stories that you read about Jesus healing this guy, raising this person from the dead, casting demons out of this woman or this man, so many of his miracles happened all around the shores of the Sea of Galilee. I would tell you that the feeding of the 5,000 happened somewhere right in here. The Sermon on the Mount happened. So many of Jesus' teachings and his life's ministry revolved around Galilee. Anybody remember from Sunday morning what tribal allotment the Galilee is in? Who owned the land? Who did God through Joshua give that land? To what tribe? Naphtali. The tribe of Naphtali. Just an aside. So when he had completed his discourse in the hearing of the people, Jesus went back to Capernaum, to his headquarters. Verse 2 says, and a centurion's slave who was highly regarded by him. Now the highly regarded by him means the slave was highly regarded by his master, the centurion. A centurion slave who was highly regarded by him was sick and about to die. A couple of facts about the Roman centurion. The Roman centurion was in charge of 100 people. That's where we get this word centuri, a centuria, Latin word for 100. The centurion was in charge. He had authority over 100 Roman soldiers. That's where he got his name, centurion. So this particular guy was not only Gentile, you could be a Gentile from anywhere in the world, but this particular man that Jesus chose to help was a Roman. And Rome was hated by Israel. Remember at these times that Rome was over Israel. Israel was not a free and independent nation. They were a slave nation to the Roman Empire. So the Romans were hated by Israel, especially hated by the Pharisees in Israel, because the Pharisees were ardent, were staunch nationalists. They wanted Israel to be free and independent. They hated the Romans. And they hated that this so-called Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, did nothing but get crucified by the Romans. I mean, what kind of conquering king for Israel is that? Jesus gave the Pharisees a lot of ammunition against him. He does it again here by healing this Roman centurion's slave. This particular man, though, even though Rome stereotypically was hated by the Jews, this man was not. This man was loved, he was honored, and he was respected in the city of Capernaum by the Jews, as we'll see. So you have two players here, actually more than two players, but the main ones are the centurion, This is the garb they would have worn. These were soldiers. These were men of war. And you have a slave. Now, slave is the Greek word doulos, and it means a slave or a servant. Remember on Sunday night we were talking about the woman Joanna, and her husband's name was Huzzah. And Huzzah was not a doulos. I said you don't see the word doulos when it speaks of this man. You see epitrophos, which is a Greek word that means a manager or a foreman. But this person was a slave, a doulos, a low-level slave. A definition, a person. What is a doulos? What is a servant in the Roman household? A person who is legally owned by someone else and now this is an important part of this. There's a boy lying ill about to die. And his future is not in his own hands. His future lies in two people's hands. Number one, his master, the centurion, and number one, the decision of Jesus Christ to help or not. That was it. This person, this doulos, is legally owned by the centurion. His entire livelihood and purpose was determined by his master, the centurion. The boy was totally helpless and lying paralyzed on a deathbed. It says here, just a picture. Sorry that it's a little bit fuzzy. But in chapter 7, verse 7, when we get to verse 7, we'll get a better idea of what type servant this person was and how old he may have been. But this was probably, I'm going to go ahead and say it. This servant, according to the word in verse 7, if you look at verse 7 really quickly, it changes the word. It uses the same word servant, but it translates a different word, pais, P-A-I-S, in verse 7. It's not a doulos. He calls him a pais, P-A-I-S, in verse 7. And that's a young slave, a youth, a boy slave. So not only is he a low-level servant, he's probably a low-level house servant. He's one that the centurion is he's intimately involved with him. He knows this servant. He's not one of 100. This is one of the few servants that the centurion knows well, because look what it says about him, that this particular slave was highly regarded by the centurion. This is a Greek word entimos, E-N-T-I-M-O-S if you want the word, but the meaning of the word is interesting. What we read in the English is, he was highly regarded by him. The slave was highly regarded by the centurion. And what the word means is of high worth or of high value. And it can also mean precious, honored, and respected. The relationship that the centurion had with the slave was unusual for a master and his slave. Luke is pointing out things about the centurion and his character that Jesus will make a concluding statement at the end of these few verses. This centurion was a man amongst men. He was a great man. And the slave obviously had high value. Now, I'm not talking about monetary value. We're talking about a respected and honored value. He was precious in the sight of his master. He was a youth. And that's why this picture caught my eye. I don't know how closely related in his service he was to the centurion, but he may have been like a cupbearer or one of these types that was very intimately and closely involved with the centurion's day-to-day life. It says about the boy that he was sick and about to die. Now that's all that that's all that Dr. Luke says about the boy, that he was sick and about to die, but Matthew adds something else about the boy. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 6, the same story told by a different author, Matthew says that the centurion made this statement: "Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, fearfully tormented." Luke doesn't add those facts. But the boy was paralyzed at home, which means he was unfit to travel to Jesus. He couldn't be taken to Jesus Christ in Capernaum. Remember, there was a paralytic that was dropped down through the ceiling in Capernaum at Peter's house one time, and Jesus healed that person. But apparently this young boy slave, was too ill to make the trip. And it also says he was fearfully tormented, which means that he was in a great deal of pain. He was in horrible pain, and Luke doesn't mention that. But that's more information about the boy. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the centurion here, he owns that boy. That boy is his legal property. He's his servant, his doulos, his slave. The centurion has all authority in this boy's life. He has all the authority to determine what would happen with the slave boy, whether he would seek medical attention, whether he would allow the boy to die. It seems like the boy is on his way to death. But the centurion made all the calls, not the boy's mother, not the boy's father. This boy was the property of the centurion. So the centurion has decisions to make concerning this treasured boy. And we see in verse 3 the decision play out. When the centurion heard about Jesus, what do you think he heard? Jesus performed most of his miracles around the Sea of Galilee. Many of them around the Sea of Galilee. He had risen people from the dead. He had made blind people see. He had made lame people walk. He had cast out demons out of Mary Magdalene. I wonder what this centurion heard about Jesus, because it says when he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders asking him to come and to save the life of his slave. So Dr. Luke tells us more here in this phrase about this centurion, and only Luke adds this fact. You can go read about this story in Matthew, you can read about it in Mark, but only Luke adds this particular fact, that the centurion didn't go to Jesus himself. The centurion sent Jewish leaders of Capernaum to Jesus. The centurion here, we start to see the picture of who this man was in Capernaum. The centurion had a good reputation among the Jews in Capernaum. Remember, Rome is hated, but not this man. Not this Roman. This Roman is different. He had a good reputation among the Jews in Capernaum, and thus he had influence in the Jewish community. So he could ask Jewish leaders to go to the Jewish Messiah, Jesus Christ, and ask for this miracle. What we see here also is that he had compassion for his young boy slave. He was a compassionate man seeking another compassionate man, Jesus of Nazareth, asking Jesus to heal, to save his beloved servant boy. Remember again, Rome is in control. Israel is not an independent nation. Rome is a hated people, which makes it all the more interesting that this particular Roman centurion was loved by the Jews. You don't have to be crammed into the mold that people expect you to be crammed into. This man rose above his culture. He wasn't like the others. He was a compassionate man of war. Interesting. So the Roman centurion, I said that Rome is in control so I can make this statement. The Roman centurion had the authority to command the Jewish leaders to go to Jesus on his behalf. He could have told them what to do. Israel was controlled by Rome. But he didn't do that. These Jewish leaders didn't go under compulsion. They didn't go because they were simply obeying a command from someone. They went for different reasons. And we'll see those reasons in just a minute. A question comes up before we go forward. Why send Jewish leaders? The centurion is a man of authority. He's got 100 men under his command. Why didn't the centurion march up to Jesus Christ and say, I need something from you? Why would this man send Jewish Jewish leaders to Jesus. We'll see more about what this Roman thought of himself as the story plays out. But I think the bulk of the reason is because even though he's a Roman centurion with great authority in Rome, to the Jews, he's still a Roman, he's still a Gentile, and he's still an outcast. This humble man understood that he could not go to Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, on his own. He understood authority. He understands the realm of authority that he is in as a Roman centurion and that Jesus is in as the Son of God, the Jewish Messiah. He simply understands realms of authority. He understood that Jesus occupied a realm of authority that no other human being occupied. He understood that Jesus had authority over all things, including death and the sickness that was about to take this young boy's life. As we go through this, I just want you to understand this fact. The centurion wasn't asking Dr. Jesus to come and heal this slave boy. The centurion understood clearly this boy will die. The centurion was asking Jesus, the Son of God, the Jewish Messiah, to come and to miraculously heal this boy. He wasn't asking for a doctor. Luke was a doctor. He wasn't asking for Dr. Luke. He was asking for Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, who had authority over all things, including this illness, whatever it was, that had this boy lying paralyzed in his house. Just understand that about the centurion. He needed Jesus, the Son of God, to save his beloved slave. He didn't need another doctor. He was beyond that. And why would the centurion even ask this of Jesus? If he didn't already know and already understand and already believe that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah and he was capable of healing this man, this boy. Verse 4 continues, when they came to Jesus, remember, these are the Jewish leaders. The centurion has sent Jewish leaders ahead. When they came to Jesus, they earnestly employed, that's a Greek phrase that's saying they were asking in all seriousness. This was a very serious event for these Jewish leaders. And it's a phrase like that that makes you know they aren't just going and obeying a command of a higher up. They have interest in the fact that Jesus do this. They're imploring in all seriousness for Jesus to actually do what they're asking him to do. So when they came to Jesus, they earnestly implored him and they said, he, the centurion, is worthy for you to grant this to him. The Jews who hated the Romans, the occupying Roman force, the Jewish leaders in Capernaum told Jesus that this centurion is worthy of this miracle. This Roman, this Gentile, this dog was another name that the Jews called the Gentiles. This man is worthy for you to grant this to him, and he gives two reasons in verse 5. Number one, he says he loves our nation. And number two, it was he who built us our synagogue. Now this is an unusual Roman centurion. A humble man who loves Israel, who treats Israel respectfully, who honors their Messiah and believes in their Messiah, who treats his slaves respectfully, who even has a relationship with his slave that he would call him honored and respected and beloved. An unusual man. He supports the worship of Yahweh in Israel. How do you know that he supports and not only loves Israel, but supports their worship? What does it say? He built them a synagogue. He built them a gathering place. Remember what it says in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. We've gone to this verse 1,000,000 times in the last 5 years. What does God promise Abraham? I will bless those who bless you. And what is about to happen as the God who spoke these words to Abraham 2,000 years earlier is now on the scene in human flesh? What is He about to do to this man who blesses Israel? He's about to bless him. He's about to give him, to grant him the desire of his heart. And what's the desire of his heart? But that this young, youthful slave, that his life be spared. He is worthy, the Greeks or the Jews say of this man. He is worthy. It's the Greek word axios, A-X-I-O-S. It means he's deserving. It also means that the man in the eyes of the Jews in Capernaum, where Jesus spent much time, in the eyes of the Jewish leaders there, this man was worthy of being treated or recognized in a particular way. He stands out. He's a head and shoulders above the others. This man, of all men, Jews included, this man is worthy of Jesus the Messiah granting a miracle. An astounding phrase and an astounding story. Let me say something else. When you get into the early church and you have this amalgamation called the church, where Jews are supposed to stand beside Gentiles in equality before the Lord, don't you think that a story like this and a true account like this about a Roman centurion who loved Israel, don't you think this would have gone a long way in the early church to make the Jews know some of these Gentiles are worthy of being in our presence? We can worship beside some of these Gentiles. This man was certainly one of them. There's almost no question that after these events, this man would have joined a church, probably the church in Capernaum, after Jesus' resurrection and the day of Pentecost came. This was a God-fearing Gentile, an unbelievably faithful man of great faith, as we're about to find out. So two things. He loves the nation Israel, and he actively shows his love for Israel. It's not just lip service. This man, it says, he built our synagogue. And in the Greek sentence, he himself are the first two words in that sentence. In the Greek, you call that putting that in the emphatic position. The first word in the sentence is the most important. Order doesn't matter in a Greek sentence. You can mix things all around. We like to say the man chased the dog. They may say chased the dog a man. It doesn't matter as long as the syntax all works. You can move the word to the beginning of the sentence that you want to highlight. And what did the Jews say first? He himself built our synagogue. Out of his own means, he either had built or built himself, paid for it to be. He certainly paid for it. The synagogue in Capernaum. Now remember, this is the synagogue right here in red. That synagogue stood in the days of Jesus Christ. That's the synagogue in Capernaum. That's the synagogue that Luke chapter 7 is speaking about. Those are the bricks, those are the stones that this centurion had laid for the Jews to worship Yahweh. An unbelievable character in the Bible, this Roman centurion. There's his synagogue, the one he built for the Jews, and the Jewish leaders, in great respect and gratitude for what that man had done for them, are now going to their Messiah, Jesus, and saying, Lord, we implore you, grant this man the desire of his heart. Save his boy. Not his son, his slave boy. What a man, this Roman centurion. Verse 6. Now Jesus started on his way. This is a very interesting switch in the story here, where the centurion first sends the Jewish leaders, and now he's having second thoughts. Not about Jesus, not about Jesus' ability, but about Jesus being under his Roman Gentile roof. Look what he says in verse 6. Now Jesus started on his way with them, with the Jewish leaders. Take me to this boy. So he starts on his way with him, and when he was not far from the house, so he's getting closer, small town, it's not a metropolis, but when he was getting closer to the house, the centurion sent friends. Not the same Jewish leaders, because they were with Jesus leading him to the proper house. It says he sent friends and he said to Jesus, and I wonder if he did this because Jesus has already made his decision and has started taking steps toward the centurion's house. Jesus has already decided, I will save the boy. And when the centurion heard that Jesus was on his way, there's no need. You've already made the decision. You could do it from wherever you are. He says, the centurion, Lord, speaking to Jesus, do not trouble yourself further. Walk no further toward my house. He says, for I am not worthy. What did the Jews just say about him? He is worthy. What is his assessment of himself being in the presence of Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah of Israel? I'm not worthy. It reminds me of Peter when he meets Jesus. I'm a man. He falls down before the Lord. He says, you got to leave me. I'm a sinner. Isaiah, I'm a man of unclean lips. I can't be here. I'm a sinner. And here this Roman, not a Jew, a Gentile, tells Jesus, I'm not worthy for you to be inside my house. I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof. Again, as I said, the more I read the Bible, the more contrast, just contrast everywhere. So what's the contrast here? The Jews say that the centurion is worthy. He's a great man who loves Israel and even built our synagogue out of his own money. The centurion, the contrast, the centurion says he's not worthy for Jesus to enter his Gentile home. He seems to understand something about Jewish culture. He built them a synagogue after all. And he says that this Jewish Messiah cannot come under my roof. In verse 7, he says, for this reason, because I'm not worthy to house you in my house. Now let's stop. Hold on. Let's talk about the centurion's house for just a second. Not a hovel. We don't know what he lived in, but this is a man of some military rank in Rome. He wouldn't have lived in a shack. He's not embarrassed about his house. He's not embarrassed about where he lives. He's not embarrassed about the floor's not right, the rug's not right, our chalices aren't good enough, our dishwashers aren't right, our clothing's not right. It's not an issue of social status. It's not about social status. He probably lived in a decent house in this town. He is a Roman centurion. But he was unworthy of Jesus of Nazareth. It reminds me also of John the Baptist. What did he say about the one who comes after him? I'm not even worthy to untie his sandal strap. Jew says this about Jesus, and now we have a Roman saying the exact same thing. I'm unworthy for this man to be even in my presence. And for this reason, in verse 7, he says, I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. He's not putting on a front. This isn't lip service. This is the man's humble heart. I love this man. I tell you, my list of people I've got to go up to in heaven first is getting huge. I can't wait to meet this man, this Gentile who caught the attention of Jesus Christ so powerfully. Oh my word, I just pray that I'm a Gentile who can catch the attention of Jesus Christ through my life as powerfully as this man did. This man made Jesus take notice. For this reason, he says, I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. He sent Jews to Jesus, not a lowly Gentile. And then he says to Jesus this, concerning authority. Remember I told you this centurion understands authority. And here that authority plays out in a couple of verses. You, Lord, only have to say the word. Just say the word, and my servant will be healed. both in the imperative mood, both commands. He's not commanding Jesus to do this. He's saying, Lord, if you would command by only a word from wherever you are, if you would simply command this sickness to leave this boy would be healed. Astounding faith. You don't have to come. You don't have to lay hands on him. You don't have to pray over him. Wherever you are, Lord Jesus, you have the power, the authority to heal this boy. You don't have to come under my roof. As a matter of fact, I'm asking you not to. I'm not worthy to be in your company. We see this word quickly, pais, P-A-I-S, the slave. This is the second word for slave, the other one being doulos. And this is the word pais, pes, that means a boy slave, a youth or a child. This word is used in the book of John for a son at one point. So it's an intimate word, an intimate word of relationship. This just wasn't some slave, and he didn't want him healed because he was of high monetary value. He wanted him healed because he loved him. The centurion loved this boy. He respected him. He honored him. He was a very high value to the centurion. And the centurion went to Jesus. No, he didn't go to Jesus. He sent others to Jesus, Jews, to ask the Jewish Messiah to save his boy. Listen to what he says about authority. He tells Jesus, Lord, trouble yourself no more. Stop where you are. Don't travel to my house. Just speak the words, and my son will be, my slave boy will be healed. And this is his explanation for that. The centurion says, for I also am a man placed under authority. So he understands his authority, and he also understands Jesus' authority. He says, I also am a man placed under authority, just like you are, Lord. You are a man of great authority. So am I. But our authority is so different. He says, with soldiers, I have soldiers under me, 100 of them. I say to this one, go. He commands his soldiers to go, and his soldier does what he says. He has the authority. He tells another soldier, come, and the soldier comes. And to his slaves, he says, I say, do this, and the slave does it. Because this centurion has authority. He understood authority. He understands how authority works, a chain of command that his slaves and his soldiers under him have to obey him. He knows also concerning Jesus Christ, because it says, and when he heard of Jesus, he's heard enough stories and made his decisions that this centurion understands that in the same way he has authority over certain things on earth, Jesus has a greater authority over all things. Look what it says in Matthew chapter 28, verse 18, out of Jesus' own mouth. Jesus came up and he spoke to them, the 12, the disciples, the 11. And he said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. The Gentile Roman centurion understood clearly, or else he would have never started this by asking the Jewish leaders to go to Jesus. The Gentile Roman centurion understood that Jesus could issue a command from afar, from anywhere, and save his servant's life. He knew that Jesus didn't have to be present. He knew that Jesus was God and that Jesus had the authority to do whatever he wanted to do. So all Jesus had to do was make the decision, and the boy was as good as healed. And the centurion knew it. As soon as Jesus decided and started walking towards his house with the leaders, the centurion we just read sent another group of friends and said, please don't come. You have the authority to do what you've already decided to do from wherever you are. What great faith. Look how verse 9 and 10 end the story. Now when Jesus heard this, the statement of the centurion that you don't have to come here, just say the word and he'll be healed. When Jesus heard this, he marveled at the Roman Gentile centurion. And he turned and he said to the crowd that was following him, a crowd of Jews, I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great faith. Can you imagine the slap in the face to the leaders of Israel hearing that this Roman Gentile person hated by Israel, the Roman occupier, the military, this man has more faith than most of the Jews I've encountered? Astounding. What a guy. Not even in Israel have I found such great faith. This man understood Jesus' authority, and that all he had to do was command that illness and that boy would be saved instantly. Verse 10 says, when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the slave in good health. The story ends. Jesus doesn't go to the house. He bids the words of the centurion as good enough. We understand each other. You understand me perfectly, I know. And he says he has great faith. Not great works, don't miss that. He has great faith in the works that Jesus can accomplish. He had great faith in the Son of Man that day. And Jesus says, not even in Israel have I found such great faith. We don't know what Jesus said. All we know is that Jesus said something and the boy was healed from a distance. Now, I'll say one other thing. We're done. I don't really want to close with this, but as a recovering Catholic, I should. In the Catholic Church, every Mass, every single Mass in the Catholic Church, part of the mantra is, Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. Exactly what the centurion just said. And I said that statement all my life until I was 18 or 19 years old, 20 years old. I made that statement. I never had a clue what it meant. Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. They take a wonderful story of a wonderful Gentile Roman centurion, a wonderful man of faith, and they bring it into their Mass almost meaningless. I never heard the story of the Gentile Roman centurion in the Catholic Church, which is sad because it's a fantastic story about a fantastic man. Another one I can't wait to meet. Let's close in prayer. Father, thank you.